will be made an order of the day for the next sitting. Clerk.
Private Members Business Notice number 4, the member for Indi to move motion in relation to court procedures in family violence cases.
Member for Indi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I move the motion relating to court procedures in family violence cases in the terms on which it appears in the notice paper.
Thank you. I call the honourable member for Indi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There are 3 issues that I will speak to today. That victims of family violence, when giving evidence in the family court, must be protected from direct cross-examination by their perpetrator or alleged perpetrator. The devastating impact to victims of being cross-examined, and calling on the Attorney-General to act swiftly in this matter and to amend the Family Law Act to protect these victims. Madam Deputy Speaker, the salient facts are that many victims are living in fear in their own homes. And imagine the circumstance when a victim of such violence finally gets out of that situation, gets the children out as well, but is exposed to further violence by their abuser in the family court system. There is an inconsistent approach between the state and federal jurisdictions. For example, a victim may be protected from cross-examination in Victoria while applying for a protection order, but not be protected in the federal family law courts in Victoria in relation to essentially the same issues. This is a situation that faced Eleanor, a woman who has been in the terrible circumstances of being directly cross-examined by her partner in court. And these are her words. "I am someone who has had direct experience when escaping a perpetrator of violence, then having to deal with the complexity of the system in keeping my children and myself safe from my abuser. My perpetrator was a self-litigant and was allowed to directly cross-examine me in our family court hearing." Eleanor, sadly, is not alone. The Women's Legal Service Australia and many other support groups have long been advocating for vulnerable witness protection to be included in the family law jurisdiction. In June this year, the Women's Legal Service Victoria made a submission to the Royal Commission into Family Violence. It recommended the federal government amend the Family Law Act to include legislative protections for vulnerable witnesses from direct cross-examination by a perpetrator of family violence. The concerns from these advocate groups have largely been dismissed due to a belief this anomaly affected only a small group of people. The Women's Legal Service Australia commissioned a survey to catalogue the experience of women, survivors and victims of domestic violence, by being personally cross-examined by their abusers in family court proceedings. The survey was distributed nationally through their networks and social media in September this year, and it has provided some valuable insights into the issue of personal cross-examination. As of today, they have received 270 responses, and the survey remains open to the 31st of December, and I encourage people to contact their state Women's Legal Service if they'd like to contribute. And let me quote from the draft survey report. Victims have been saying, "It felt like he was given a stick to beat me while everybody watched. I was absolutely paralysed, fearful with anger. I could not talk at all. I was overwhelmed by feelings of fear, stress and anxiety. The whole process was incredibly disempowering and exhausting. It destroyed me. I was physically ill on the side of the road on the way to the court." Here we have traumatised and broken victims of family violence being exposed to the violence all over again. COAG has made domestic violence a national priority. Governments are acting, and I commend the Prime Minister for his recent announcement of a $100 million package of measures to provide a safety net for women and children at high risk of experiencing domestic violence. And while the funding is welcome, there is a simple and powerful action the government can take now. The government can legislate to protect victims when giving evidence in the family court. And when he made this announcement, the Prime Minister stated, "Women and children in Australia have the right to feel safe and live without fear of violence. All victims have this right." I agree. And today I call on the government to move on this issue, to take action, to take immediate and urgent action to ensure that the Family Law Act includes specific protection for vulnerable witnesses, to stop direct cross-examination by a perpetrator or alleged perpetrator. And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to say thank you to Eleanor for her courage in sharing the story, and I take her call with pride to this House. Thank you.
Thank you, Member for Indi, and thank you for your proposal.